Hello, everyone. Welcome to Key to the Pastcast, a podcast produced by the Trumbull County Historical Society.
Before we get started into this week's episode, as always, we'd like to shout out our sponsors for this podcast. It is
Ohio Humanities and the Community Foundation of the Mahoning Valley have generously sponsored this first season.
Thank you so very much for your support, and thanks for the listeners.
We are extremely excited for this episode because the guest is one of the people that we know the best, one of our amazing volunteers and general warrant extraordinaire, Tim Boyer. I am Megan Reed with the Trumbull County Historical Society.
And I am Ryan McLennan with the Trumbull County Historical Society.
And before we kick this episode off, we do owe a huge thank you to our sponsors of the show, the Community Foundation of the Mahoning Valley and Ohio Humanities, very generously sponsored this first season.
And thank you very much to our listeners. So getting into this episode a little bit, it's obviously with Tim, somebody that we all know very well. And if you're anywhere near Modern Methods, you've seen him too. I think a really nice way to encapsulate Tim before we get into it is what Adam Keck, the owner of Modern Methods, said, which is that if there would be 10 more Tim Boyers in the world, not exactly like him because that would be weird, but 10 more like him, the world would be a better place.
The world would be such a better place.
Right. And so we all echo that sentiment when we think about Tim. Mm-hmm. But getting into the episode, what struck me the most about it is how deeply passionate he was about Denman Tire.
That's very true. That's because I think like we're passionate about our jobs, but we work for a nonprofit. We do community work. You don't hear necessarily all the time people who work for corporations being like so passionate and driven about their work. Yeah. And I think that that's a huge testament to just who Tim is. Like anything he does, he fully jumps in, right? Yeah. And he's always there. Anything we need him for, if he's not abroad, going on some trip, he's there.
Yeah.
And I think this episode also gives us a really interesting look in terms of just how times have changed.
Yeah.
And how how corporations were run when he was there, and how that changed over time, and how that reflects today.
Yeah, the one thing I want to piggyback on there is this idea that Tim got to grow up there, right?
Yes.
And so that's part of the attachment to it, right?
Yes.
He starts when he's 19 or 20 years old, I think he says, and he really meets his wife there. He has a child there, and he grows as a person there, and that's part of an interesting corporate structure, right? Like you can stay there for a long time, develop your friendships, your families, your relationships, and that in some ways fosters who you are, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, and developed, and they also gave him the opportunity to develop his like professional skill set over time too.
Yeah,
right. Like I think so many times today, if a corporation needs somebody who knows advanced technology, they just hire that person instead of training somebody up. Yeah. I'm sure that does happen.
Sure.
But in this case, Tim was definitely passionate about the topics. He was excited to learn more and grow. Yeah. And I think that shows throughout his career why he was so successful.
Yeah, very much. That he was always willing to jump in, especially with a computer program that needed to be learned or some way of managing some sort of spreadsheet. He was very willing to jump in. And through that, he was able to move up the sort of corporate ladder, but also maintain relationships throughout the company, which certainly comes across.
Yeah, and eventually get him a super fancy top secret job.
Yeah.
Which you'll have to wait and hear about later in the episode.
Which he can't divulge too much information because it was a top secret government job. But it is interesting that as Denman goes out of business and so on and so forth, that where he transitions his next stage of life is.
The other thing I would want to say about this episode is that we've talked about steel. We've talked about sort of the big industry in this area. But I think one of the things that I love about this episode is that we really have an opportunity to dive deep into another company that hired people in this area, but wasn't necessarily part of that heavy industrial system like we think of steel. Like it was definitely tied into that, right? There was definitely some overlap in terms of, I'm sure, their customers and the kinds of things they were producing, but it wasn't a steel industry.
Right. But still hard work, still laborious work.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that this, along with steel, sort of coincides in the same way that the Denman Tire works alongside Firestone and Goodyear. And they are able to find their niche and last for nearly a century. And that's super interesting to me too. And hired over several hundred people working there. And I don't know, it's just a testament to like industry in this area and the hard work of people here. And I don't know, I think that comes across too.
I completely agree.
Okay, without further ado, please welcome Tim Boyer.
Tim.
Tim Boyer grew up in Warren and graduated from Harding in 1973. He went on to earn an associate degree in computer technology from Kent Trumbull, a BA from Hiram, and a master's degree in technology from Kent. He worked at Denman from 1975 until 2010, leaving only when the company went out of business. He then worked in IT for the federal government until his retirement in 2022. He moved to Champion with his wife Heather when his son Corey was born in 1980, and then to Cortland in 2002, where he now resides. His wife passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2019. Since retirement, he has been traveling, most recently to Australia. When he's in this country, he can usually be found at the Historical Society or on the corner stool at Modern Methods.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome.
So for those of you who do not know Tim Boyer, he is a staple in our community and one of our very best volunteers. And one of the very first conversations I had with Tim, we were talking about his work at Denman Tire. This seemed like a perfect opportunity to delve into that staple business in Trumbull County and learn more about not just Denman, but also, Tim, what you did there.
So I started out in 1975 working in the lab, measuring race tires. You used to have to measure them to make sure they were the big racing slicks. You measured them to make sure they were all the same size and marked them on them. Then I went to timekeeper. Then I did payroll. And in 1979, I was going to Kent State for computer technology. And Denman was running equipment that IBM said would no longer work in 1980. So they looked around, found the only person they knew who knew what a computer was, and said, buy us a computer.
So, Tim, when Denman was first founded, can you give us a sense of like what they were doing as a company in the community?
So in 1919, Denman was founded by Walter Denman. The property out in Braceville was donated to them by the city of Warren, and they had big plans. They were going to be a big... Walter had worked at General, I think, and Goodyear, and was a tire engineer, got some funding. And this was in the days when there were as many tire companies as there were car companies in the 20s or computer companies in the 70s. Everyone started a tire company. And he started one in Warren because of the proximity to Akron. And they went from 1919 to 2010.
Wow.
Which is a good run for any company. You know, they went out of business, but
Absolutely.
yeah, places go out of business, unfortunately. But it was a great place to work. They were union since early 60s, and one of the first union presidents was James Culver, who was very active in the Warren NAACP. It was a integrated plant. Many people in Braceville worked at John Tolles, Walt Tolles, those families worked there. It was a very interesting place to work at.
Yeah. So you started there when you were very young.
I just turned 19.
So how did you find it? Like what made you apply?
Snelling and Snelling Employment Agency, because Dad said I had to get a job. So I had to pay them my first month wages. It really ticked me off. And that was $475 I had to pay them. It was, but no, I went through an employment agency. They found me this job. They were looking for a high school grad with strong math, and that's what I did. And then finished an associate degree there, finished a bachelor's from Hiram, then a master's from Kent. So I grew up there. They knew me as well as anyone. They knew my wife and my son. The first web page in 1996, my son, who was 16 at the time, wrote it.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I wrote the back end. He wrote the front end. And it had such a fun thing as a button that says the tires are out there, and it played the X-Files thing. So.
Very good. Can we circle back to you being the only one there? I know you're being facetious, but you're the only one there that knew what a computer was. Can you talk about that process of that transition in your work, but also to computer engineering at that time, how that impacted Denman Tires, etc.?
So it was late 70s, and personal computers had not come out. The thing of the day was a mini computer. I did a lot of investigation, went to seminars because I was going to Kent for the degree, and finally came up with a dated General mini computer, which, of course, is long out of business. But I still have the invoice. It was $39,000. It included 64K of memory.
Whopping 64K.
And 5 megabytes of disk.
Oh.
And a $3,000 monitor.
Of course.
It's a big monitor.
Yeah. So,
was it a big monitor?
No, it was 15. It was a normal monitor.
It was smaller than this laptop right now.
So 40,000 in 79 is probably 400,000 now, thereabouts.
Everyone's personal computer.
But it was a big investment for them. And they took a leap to let this kid run with this. And I did all the programming. We didn't buy programs. I wrote payroll and accounting and plant manufacturing.
I was just going to ask you what you use the computer for right off the bat. Do you think it did streamline the work?
It did. We were at the point we had 13 part invoices. Imagine that. 13 part, because you filed them, then you filed them numerically, then you filed them alphabetically, then you filed them by address. 13 part invoices, and they all went somewhere. And we went to 3, I think. They always say, computer doesn't get rid of anybody back then. They were always saying that. This did. They got reassigned. But we had 6 people working in billing, and we went down to 1.
Wow. Something else that's very interesting about Denman that you talk about all the time is its relationship to other townships in Trumbull County. So its relationship to Newton Falls, its relationship to Braceville, its relationship to Levittsburg. So if you want to just talk a little bit about how much it meant to those communities, that would be interesting.
Well, it very much was rather than Warren-centric, it was very Braceville, Levittsburg, Newton Falls centric. Most of the people worked in those neighborhoods, and some of them one of them, Dennis Kuchta, is a Braceville trustee and worked at Denman forever. Lots of folks who lived and were active in the community worked at Denman. By the end, I had one kid who was the great-grandson of a guy I started working with. So, it was a family affair.
Wow. And what was I know you said that just like car companies or computer companies in the 70s and tire companies at the turn of the century, 19-teens and 20s, what was the competition like for Denman with people and your next door neighbors being Firestone and Goodyear? Or was there a niche for Denman that they didn't fill, or what was the capacity to compete with them?
So we started off doing passenger tires along with everyone else. But eventually the big guys went into radials, went into more traditional car tires, and we found niches. We did things like, if you see any wide wipeout tire, the odds are, maybe not now, but it was made by Denman.
Oh, wow.
If you're a car collector and Coker Tire or Leicester Tire or Bedford, we made all of those, put their name on it and made them. Got to the point where we were making Firestone white walls.
Wow.
For Firestone. Then we got into racing tires in the late 70s, drag slicks.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up making them for Firestone. Then we pivoted like that. Then in, let's see, at 75 I got there, we just made our first aggressive truck tire. Huh. We ended up making the largest passenger truck tire, 45 inches high, 18 inches wide, and got into that, and we're private branding things like Swampers and Mudders and things that any enthusiast knows. And then we finally got into industrial tires and started making those. And so we found a niche. We found where the big guys weren't, where the volume was so small that they didn't want to bother. We would make things like 35 tire runs, and Firestone makes 35,000. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a GM Dreamliner. It was from the 40s, 50s, these huge tires with big white walls that they couldn't find. We made a 20 tire run for a company, and no one in the world is going to do that besides us.
Yeah.
When was if you had to put a time period on it, when was like the height of Denman Tire, like as a factory output, number of employees, and if you remember any sense of how many employees that would be interesting, I think.
So I think late 90s, we were up over 400 employees.
Wow.
So it was a good sized company. It topped out at around 80 million in sales.
Oh, wow. That is.
Kept that up for a while, and the management in the early 2000s warned us that Denman was dying if we didn't do anything, and nobody saw it except them. They were much smarter than I was. I know, how are we dying? We're working 7 days a week, 3 shifts. Well, we did. The Chinese came in and ate our lunch. And the 2008 recession kind of put a nail into it, and by 2010 it was done. There's nothing left.
Yeah. How did you feel when that happened?
It killed me. I knew I'd be okay. I was unemployed for a week. But there are people there who had worked there all their lives, whose parents had worked there, who had a high school education and were making a good living. And those are the people I felt terrible about.
Yeah. It's interesting when you look at the scale of how often that happened here and like the impact that has over time.
And generationally, right? Like, because then their kids don't get a chance to work there too, right?
Right. You're a steel worker. You're making good money, and the mill goes. Where do you go?
Right.
Yeah. Somewhere else.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or nowhere else.
Yeah.
Very true. So you said the land was donated to the original founders of Denman.
Yes.
And then how did the facility expand? Did it move ever?
Nope, never moved. Stayed in the same place. We were right by the Mahoning River, so we had a good source of water. We were well water and Mahoning River water until 2000 or so. And Newton Falls ran a line down to us. But before that, we used the water. We had a sanitary plant on property, so we had a sewage and everything there. Just expanded. We had somewhere around 100 acres, so it was a good size. Yeah.
Is the building still there?
No, they knocked it down less than a year before, after it got sold. Yeah, no, there's nothing left except a fence. I don't think they're ever going to be able to do anything with that land because we were a coal-fired furnace.
It's contaminated.
And it's, yes, very. And there's a century of ashes in the back.
How dangerous was the work at Denman? Do you have a sense of that?
It was very, very old equipment. We had all the modern safety features. We put them into place. We had made sure we were good, but you could get mangled. And I know one guy who did. It was not pretty, but it was things like 500 pounds of 200-degree rubber falling right in front of you, and you reached in and cut it with a knife.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And it was literally 1920s and 1930s equipment that had been retrofitted with motors because it was originally belts and clutches and things like that, and they put an electric motor on it, got it to work.
I remember you telling me about how you didn't wear a ring, didn't wear ties on the floor.
Exactly.
For that reason, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do not want to get pulled into a rubber mill.
I think we all understand why. Like, we don't need any explanation more than that at all. To continue on the path, so after you sort of install these like computer programs that help you with invoicing and payroll and things like this, where does that take you next? I know that you said eventually in 2006 or 1996 you build a website, but what's the 20 years in between that?
Writing new systems. So it started with accounts receivable and invoicing, then went to accounts payable, general ledger. Eventually I had a full manufacturing shop floor so that it could schedule all the tires based on orders. Payroll. That was our old payroll processor dropped us, and I said, "No, don't get another one. I'll write a payroll."
Because very Tim.
Because I started out in timekeeping, so I knew the system.
Sure.
So, no, let me write a payroll, which was an exercise. And then eventually got into, like I said, the web page. But then I started moving out into the plant, and I was eventually the electrical engineer and writing PLC programs for the machinery. And they kept me there because they kept giving me new stuff to do. Which, as you know,
it's very Tim.
That's how you keep me here.
We all looked at each other, and
that's exactly what Tim does for us.
Right. Just give him new things to do. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun. They put me out the plant, and I put in a new hot water heating system and did plant engineering things, and eventually became the chief technical officer. And by the end of it, was basically the chief operating officer.
It's very impressive.
It is.
The owner would not make me president because he said, "Tim, you hate conflict." And I'd argue with him, except I was afraid to. But no, he was absolutely right.
That landed. Yes.
That's funny.
Okay, you're right.
That's very good. Could you talk a little bit more, I guess, about what some of the other jobs would be at the factory, at the plant, just so we get a better, broader scope of what that looked like on a day in, day out for the 400 people that work there at the height of its power?
So we were one of the few plants in the country that took raw rubber in from overseas and processed it the whole way through. So we do things like get huge bales of rubber from overseas and had a guy who cut them into usable slabs, brought them up into a rubber mixer called a Banbury, after a man in England, which basically took 500 pounds of rubber and chemicals, and they dumped them in and mixed it with we had a 1,400 horsepower World War II submarine motor. I'm not sure what the official thing to do is.
Very safe.
Yes.
But mixed it, dropped it onto mills about 84 inches long, 2.5 feet wide, rotating mills, and milled it out. The guy took a knife. So the knives you see me use that's a mill knife. Cut that off, rolled it down onto pallets, and then from there it went to places like we had a tread extruder. You dump a bunch of rubber in, and it extrudes out through a mold the shape of a tread. We had a calendar spelled with an ER, which is why I misspelled the word calendar on all of my documents, that takes the rubber and applies it to a fabric. So it's rubber-coated fabric. We had a bias cutter, which cut that fabric on a bias on an angle, and a bead wrapper, which takes strands of metal and wraps them around into a bead, extrudes rubber on them. And then there were about 40 tire building machines where they take the fabric, put it down, take the tread, put it on, take the beads, put them on, and make them into a tire, which is called a green tire. Then you take that green tire out into the curing room where there were 30 or so presses, which are huge hydraulic things with a mold that is shaped like the negative of what the tire is going to look like. To smooth tire into there, the press closes, it pushes out steam at about 220 psi, and it cooks it to vulcanize it and pushes it out into the mold to shape it. Then you take that over to the final finish area and you buff it, clean it up, and send it to the warehouse.
That was exhaustive and awesome.
It's like a very clear understanding of like each of the different sections.
Yeah.
And you had specialists at each. You had a tuber, you had the booker, and you had a specialist working each. 4 or 5 people on each location.
So we recently did an interview with Martha Polani about this Italian immigration, but we also talked a bit about steel and like this culture of steel. Mm-hmm. And one of the things she said that really struck me was that so much of the labor was heavy labor.
Yes.
Where like places like Boston, Massachusetts, Lowell, they're like textile mills, women and young children were working in these mills, and they were able to produce that type of labor. But in Warren and the steel mills, they weren't, right? This was really, for lack of a better term, like man's work. And women and children weren't able, like they weren't hired into those positions. So they were doing other things, whether it was, selling stuff out of their home or creating like more social groups. So you get this different culture. And as you were talking, that I was thinking about that it seems like a lot of like really hard, like manual labor.
It is, and hot. Mm-hmm. When you're in the curing room, there's steam everywhere. You hit a warm summer and it's 120 degrees.
Yeah.
And you're fully clothed and working hard.
Yeah.
We had a 30-year retirement plan because you made it 30 years, you've done 30 years of hard work.
Yeah. Was it mostly men that worked there?
Mostly men, but when I started out, there was one woman, Ruthie Church.
Ruthie Church. Go Ruthie.
Yeah. Mostly men, but towards the end, no, there were some strong women there. Sherry, if you're listening, I'm talking to you. There were women who worked out in curing. There were women who kept up with the best of them. They're like women in the armed forces. Right, 50 years ago, no, they weren't there, and now, yes, they are.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Can we go all the way back to its founding a little bit? How much more do you know about the founding of Denman Tires? How it gets its like run, like how they set up the business plan, any of that sort of thing that can make this a more complete sort of full story?
I have documents that I can bring in and with Walter Denman saying, we have an advantageous possibility for you. Very 1919 kind of thing. Right. They went bankrupt early, became Fidelity Tire. They've gone bankrupt 4 or 5 times. Were bought by a New York firm. The president was Gene Tunney, who was a boxer. If you've ever heard the Long Count, the Dempsey-Tunney fight.
Oh, yeah.
They were based in New York and became president. Because it was a New York firm, they didn't want to keep coming down to Warren and getting a hotel room, so they decided to buy build a house. And they built a house along Mahoning Avenue. The company owners could come in from New York and have a decent place to stay.
So the reason we're laughing is because I currently own that house. Me and my partner moved in 2019, and it's just really fascinating. It's a white brick house. It's a ranch. And when it was we have the plans from when it was built in 1945 by Denman Tire.
Yeah.
And there were 2 suites, if you will. Like there was a common area, then a bedroom, bathroom, and then the basement, same thing, common area, bedroom, bathroom. And then over time, the subsequent owners added on the kitchen and the master bedroom area. And it's kind of a jumble of a home because it was never meant to be a private residence. Right. But it's super fascinating that places like Denman were building company housing there. Yeah.
I do not know which hotel. We owned a hotel in Warren.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We had a service station in Warren where one of the salesmen when I was there, the head of sales, Henry Wolchak, started when he was 16. So he retired at 66 with 50 years with the company.
Wow. What was your favorite thing about working there?
Doing different things. And the people. They became my friends. And these are people that very different background. Didn't come from the same town or city, but good guys, good people. I miss that.
Do you have a least favorite thing about working there?
Yeah, breathing in enough carbon black that you spit black when you come home. I did not wear my clothes inside the house for 35 years.
Wow.
You stripped in the garage if you didn't take a shower at work. And you had work clothes and you had home clothes and never the twain shall mix.
Were there showers at the plant?
Yeah. We had showers, we had a cafeteria, but you need... so carbon black is, if you've ever changed toner, it's that stuff.
Oh, fun.
And it is everywhere. We had a separate office, and the first thing you do in the morning is come in and wipe the film of black off of your desk, and it didn't help. It was a very dirty place. I still don't wear shoes inside, just out of habit. I feel like I'm going to get yelled at.
Yeah. So the recession in 2008 failed almost every industry, not only nationwide but globally, as we all know.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, you said it closed.
Yep. We tried staying alive. We did more stuff to try to stay alive in 2 years than you could imagine. We went to reach out to everyone. Sherrod Brown was down here. Everyone. We reached out to the commissioners. The money wasn't there.
Yeah. It had gone. So one of the things, the people that sort of saw it coming, your board that saw it coming before the collapse in 2008, when it did finally, were they, this is not the right way to phrase it, but there's the only way I can think of this, were they like, I told you so? And was it that, or was it more?
No, because I think the union gave up a lot to try to keep us alive. They took concessions twice. So it wasn't everyone saying, no, we don't believe you. It's, what can we do?
Sure.
And the answer is, man, the union did everything they could possibly to try to keep us going. I mean, they were good people, and we worked well with them. We had one strike two strikes, but the second one doesn't count because it lasted a day. I think the first one was a week or two in 35 years of that.
Wow.
And this is a steelworkers union, so these weren't wimps.
Yeah.
But they were rational, and I think we worked well together. But no, it wasn't. I told you so. We did all we could.
Sure. That makes sense. I don't know if that was completely fair to ask, but it's...
Totally. Yeah. Because I think a lot of companies were, we're in trouble. Yeah, I know you're not. You're lying to us.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Of course. Yeah.
Company union. And this one was, we know it. We'll try something different.
Sure. Good.
Do you want to talk about what you did after you left Denman?
So I started looking for a job, which was terrifying because I was old. I was in my mid-50s.
Tim, you'll never be old.
I know. And I saw...
Don't do that. Just make it... We have to push down his ego occasionally.
I saw an ad for a job in Boyers, Pennsylvania, which I had no idea existed, for a IT guy who knew Linux and was a system administrator. I mean, it looked like they could have written for me for the federal government, contractor for the federal government. And I sent in my resume and said on the bottom that it would be very cool to be the Boyer and Boyers.
That's funny.
Of course you did.
Oddly, they hired me, and that's how I started my phone calls. Hi, this is Boyer and Boyers. For the next 15 years, 13 years. So I started as a contractor, and it's in the Iron Mountain Mine in Boyers, Pennsylvania, which is the most fascinating place in the world. 300 feet underground is an abandoned limestone mine. And the government has servers there, and all kinds of places keep their important papers and film there. CBS has their film library there. Patent Office has stuff there. Bill Gates' Corbis photo project keeps their film there, and it's climate controlled.
Interesting.
And it's, people ask me, why don't you move closer to it? Well, it's an hour from here, due east on 80, and there is nothing closer. But it was an hour drive because, I'm off of 11. It's an hour drive down 80. And I worked with people in Baltimore, Fort Meade, and Washington, and they always said, how far away are you? 65 miles. How long does it take to get there? 65 minutes. Because they're 3 miles away and it takes them 65 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
Put it on cruise control, put it on a podcast, and head east.
Did you enjoy it there?
I loved it there.
Yeah.
It was my thing, doing system administration and managing a bunch of geeks who were just like me. Sitting in a room with the lights turned off.
I know you've said this before, but you've mentioned that you can't really talk about what you did in like its total capacity, but can you vaguely talk about it?
We were responsible for these servers that do security clearance for the federal government, Office of Personnel Management. So it was a responsibility, but fun work.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So you had an hour, 65-minute drive there, 65-minute drive back.
Yeah.
The other thing that you didn't say is that you were never going to move there, not only because there's nothing there, but you're a Trumbull County guy.
I can't move to Pennsylvania.
Right.
I'd have to start rooting for the Steelers or something.
Right. I don't really know if I have anything else I would add about Denman, but I'll give you the same courtesy we give all of our guests. Was there anything else you would want people to know about Denman Tires, about the people that work there, about the company, anything that you just would like to say, well, there's a captive audience?
Just that I miss them. They were good people, good, hardworking people that did their best, and circumstances got the best of them. And I wish it hadn't happened. It was the best thing that could have happened for me, but I hope they're all doing well and that they've gotten through it. That's all.
Yeah, and if anybody who's listening to this also worked there, please send us a message, either through Facebook, our website, through our info at TrumbullCountyHistory.org, email
Instagram,
account,
whatever.
Instagram. We'd love to hear your story too, and we can pull some of those and even put them on the podcast page.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Oh, yes,
welcome. Thank you, Tim.
So welcome.
Such a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not like we all see you every week, but it's nice to right. But thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Our object highlight for today, one of the papers that Tim brought to us, he brought a few different papers, like archives that he had saved over the years. And he's also donating some photographs from Denman Tire to the Historical Society. And in going through what he brought, one of the things that we think is the most interesting is a page called Salary Requisition. But really, it's the paper that they used when they hired him. It lists a bit of a job description and his name, and it's signed by the sort of top people at the company. And he was hired in 1975 as job title Lab Tech Trainee. The educational requirements for that job were a high school grad with strong math background, which certainly Tim fits that piece.
He's a human calculator.
Yes, a human calculator. Right. The hours for the job were listed at 8:30 to 5. The department was the laboratory. At the bottom, it says hire. So if you think of that as the job description at the top, and then at the bottom, there's a separate internal piece that says, who did they hire? It says Tim Boyer, salary $475 per month. And his starting date was March 12th, 1975. So it's really interesting just to see the behind the scenes of how that work functioned, and also to see how we know Tim today. His very first job, what was the description? What were they looking for? And how he perfectly fit.
Yeah, 100% the description.
Yes.
I think he does say in the interview as well that it sort of comes out of necessity because he doesn't do so well at Ohio State, and then his father's like, you need a job. And this is the job he gets, and then he goes back to school and goes on to accomplish what he accomplishes. But it's certainly the beginning part of his journey, and that's really amazing, and talks a little bit about the behind the scenes of Denman Tire, which is cool. And to accompany this, Tim brought in a bunch of photographs and different memorabilia from Denman Tire, which we'll attach to this episode on our website.
Absolutely. Definitely check those out. As you'll hear in the episode, the building is not there anymore. So it is really interesting to see how the building changed over time. There's a few different decades represented there.
And with that, we'd like to thank you very much and see you next time.
Thank you.